You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say. You can be whatever you feel like or choose to be. Really?
This video was brought to you by Patreon. Support my activism and gain early access to all my videos for only $1 a month. The talk you're about to hear is by far the most hateful talk ever produced by Jehovah's Witnesses, and by none other than Kenneth Cook, a governing body member who, so far, had remained fairly innocent in his rhetoric. As we listen and dissect his speech, please try to put yourself in the shoes of someone from the LGBT community who happens to be trapped in this religion. Maybe they were raised by Jehovah's Witness parents, or they were indoctrinated later as adults. Imagine how it must feel to belong to a religion which is already hostile to people like you, and then looking for spiritual encouragement, you hear this talk. Ugh, this is some of the worst material I've ever covered. All I ask from you is don't forget to drop a like and share this video with anyone who needs it, so more people become aware of the bigotry of this religion. Without further ado, let's watch.
This verse assures us that Jehovah is going to stop the ruining of the earth. In the Bible, the word earth can have more than one meaning. First, let's look at the planet. Unlike the planets that have been named after false gods, Genesis chapter 1 tells us that Jehovah named this planet Earth. As for the false labeling of the other planets, we can be certain that those disgusting names will soon be gone.
Right off the bat, this is just such a strange tangent to rant about, but I think it's a perfect foreshadowing of what is to come. This man is so self-righteous that he is offended by the names of the planets. Also, he's simply incorrect. Jehovah did not name the earth. The word earth comes from Old English. It literally means ground. This term itself is derived from Proto-Germanic, which in turn comes from Proto-Indo-European. Two of these were pagan societies. So yeah, you're using pagan words, Kenneth Cook. Also, wait till someone tells him that the place he works in, Bethel, is also derived from a false god. Bethel literally means the house of El, El being the name of the most important god in the Canaanite pantheon. Yahweh was originally one of the gods subordinate to El, but Hebrew writers would eventually fuse El and Yahweh together to form one deity, Elohim. Sorry, Kenneth, but your own holy book is infused with Canaanite paganism. But of course you don't care about scholarship, do you?
But as for the earth, Jehovah leaves us in no doubt about its future. It was created to last forever. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4 states that although generations of people at this time come and go, the earth, it says, that is the planet, remains forever. Psalm 104 verse 5 adds that it will not be moved from its place forever and ever.
None of these two verses are what you think they mean, Mr. Cook. In Ecclesiastes, the author is simply observing the cycle of life. When you compare human life to the earth, well then yeah, the earth does seem to last forever. When the psalmist says the earth will not be moved from its place, it's because the ancient Hebrews saw the earth as a flat disk, supported by stable pillars. It could literally not be moved from its place. If you read the whole psalm, you will get a vivid image of the earth as the Hebrews saw it. It's a beautiful poem, but not very scientifically accurate. Way to cherry-pick the Bible, Kenneth.
Jehovah hates to see the earth being ruined today as it is. And we can be certain that he hates the pollution, the damage to the earth's climate, the misuse of its resources, and the devastation of human wars.
Keep in mind that this is the same God who polluted the land of Egypt with 10 horrific plagues, who used the weather to kill people, who ordered the never-ending slaughter of animals in the temple, who initiated constant warfare, and literally drowned every single animal on the earth except for whatever could be filled in a box. I don't know, Kenneth, but Jehovah doesn't sound very eco-friendly to me.
So then, what about the people? Does Jehovah's disgust at the ruining of the earth apply to the ruining of mankind as well? Yes.
one final comment in this section. The Bible has no concept of ecological conservation as we know it today. In fact, the people of the ancient Near East believed that what could pollute the land was the displeasure of the gods. If you failed to worship the gods accordingly, the rains would not fall and the crops would fail. The land could be cursed or blessed by God. So when the Bible says that man was ruining the earth, this does not refer to physical pollution, it refers to moral pollution. For example, Leviticus 18:28 says that if you defile the land, it will vomit you out as it vomited out the nations that were before you. How could the Israelites defile the land? By failing to follow the law of Moses. Simple as that. The idea of the earth as we understand it, as a spherical planet that needs preserving, this idea does not exist in the Bible. This part of the talk is innocent enough, but I wanted to cover it because it just shows you how biblically illiterate this man is. He has no idea what he's talking about. So we already mentioned that the Bible does speak of moral corruption of the land. Now Kenneth will take this idea and go on a full-blown rant against gay people. Here we go.
Along with false religion, human society in general is gradually corrupting everything that Jehovah has set in place for mankind. We see it in their incessant nationalistic wars. We see it in their racial hatred and divisiveness. We see it in their promoting of abortion. We see it in their so-called gay marriage. We see it in the gender blurring that the world is promoting. You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say. You can be whatever you feel like or choose to be. Really? What does Jehovah say about that? At Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 5, he told the nation of Israel that, quote, "A woman must not put on the clothing of a man, nor should a man wear the clothing of a woman, for anyone doing so is detestable to Jehovah your God." If that is how the Creator feels about the switching of clothing, how much more detestable he must view the world's attempts to blur the lines of gender with false labeling. Recently, the World Health Organization adjusted its view of gender. It now states that, quote, "There are many genders existing on a spectrum from male to female." It added that gender identity exists on a continuum and that sex is not limited to male or female. Again, really? Talk about an attempt to tear apart what Jehovah has made. So then even government agencies on a global scale are getting involved, and they are critical of anyone who does not adopt their warped view. At Proverbs 19, verse 3, it explains, "It is a man's own foolishness that distorts his way, and his heart becomes enraged against Jehovah." And going back to marriage, Jehovah instituted the arrangement to be a permanent bond between a man and a woman. At Matthew 19, verses 4 and 5, we read how Jesus emphasized this while he was on the earth. Quoting from Genesis 2:24, he said this, "Have you not read that the one who created them from the beginning made them male and female and said, 'For this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and will stick to his wife, and the two will be one flesh'?" He made them male and female, and the two will be one flesh. Jehovah's purpose for humans is clear, but Satan's world now says that marriage can be between two men or two women. Again, really? We can be certain that promoting this corrupt view is part of Satan's attempt to ruin mankind, to make them so abhorrent to Jehovah that he would abandon humans and his purpose for mankind in the earth.
There's so much to discuss here. So much. I will be dismantling the talk bit by now. Because this condescending cunt is wrong on so many levels. Let's start here.
We see it in their so-called gay marriage. Jehovah instituted the arrangement to be a permanent bond between a man and a woman.
Okay, let's talk about marriage for a bit, guys. We need to establish some context here. Of course, Kenneth believes that it was God that instituted the marriage arrangement 6,000 years ago in the Garden of Eden. He points to the story of Adam and Eve and to Jesus quoting such story. But we can dismiss the Adam story as a myth because we know that humanity is older than 6,000 years. Way older. All the archaeological evidence supports this. There was no Adam and Eve. They are mythical characters, an allegory. So we know marriage did not begin in the Garden of Eden. So where did it come from? Well, it arose independently across isolated cultures as a way for different families to form economic and political alliances. Give your son to my daughter, and we won't attack each other. Made sense. Most early marriages were arranged by the family, and the notion of monogamous marriage as the norm was only instituted in the Middle Ages. After centuries of influence by the Catholic Church, in fact, many cultures around the world today are still practicing arranged and polygamous marriage. The point is, marriage is a very human creation. It served a practical purpose in the tribal structure of early societies. And monogamous marriage is an incredibly recent phenomenon, considering that for most of history, polygamy has been the norm. So why did I just give you the entire history of marriage? Because Kenneth wants you to believe that God only tolerates marriage between one man and one woman, that this is the only model for a God-sanctioned marriage arrangement, which is total BS. God also tolerated and regulated marriage between one man and one woman, one man and his concubines, or one man and his captives of war, or one man and his deceased brother's wife. And why did God allow these marriages if they were not according to his design? If they were a deviation from his original plan in the Garden of Eden? Well, because the Bible is man-made. Because the Old Testament was written by men who embraced polygamy. Monogamous marriage is just as man-made as polygamous marriage. Also, heterosexual marriage is just as man-made as homosexual marriage. They're both social contracts created by men.
We see it in their so-called gay marriage.
Kenneth calls it so-called gay marriage because he's being condescending. He doesn't consider it quote-unquote real marriage, only because his holy book doesn't mention it. But don't let him fool you. Adam and Eve didn't exist, so there's nothing substantial backing his arguments.
We see it in the gender blurring that the world is promoting. You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say. You can be whatever you feel like or choose to be.
Really?
Alright, gender identity is a fascinating topic, and it's only been brought to the spotlight quite recently. And before you go on the comment section and write something like, "Oh, there are only two genders, it's basic biology," please, don't bother. Stop for a second. Just listen for a bit, will you? Human beings are complicated. Life is never black and white. I believe these type of comments don't usually come from a place of intolerance, but from a lack of information. And so let's discuss this for a bit. Gender and sex are not the same thing. Sex refers to your biology, the genes that decide your physical characteristics and the brain function. Most people are born male or female, yes, but there are also people who do not fall under this binary, which we call intersex. There's also people that display male physical characteristics, including male genitalia, but their brain composition develops more female functions. Essentially, a female brain trapped inside a male body, or vice versa. This is a crazy oversimplification. On this topic, I direct you to this video by Forrest Balkai, who is an actual biologist. He is really good at explaining this topic and backs it up with scientific research, so you can better understand all the nuances that come with the topic of sex. Okay, so how about gender? Well, just like marriage, gender is a social construct. But let me explain what I mean by this before you start hating on me. What do you usually associate with quote unquote manly or masculine behavior? Would you picture a man wearing high heels? Well, in our modern society, no, men usually don't wear high heels. Those are associated with women. But the kings of France loved wearing high heels. It was an accepted gender norm at the time. How about wigs? How about eyeliner? For example, the Pashtun men of Afghanistan considered eyeliner acceptable, even though they practice Islam and would definitely condemn gay marriage. You see, the thing about gender is that the gender norms are changing all the time and are dictated by society, not by God. Gender is not a simple black and white dichotomy. It's a spectrum. There are people who don't identify as completely male or completely female, and that's okay. Queer people exist, non-binary people exist, transsexual people exist, and their identity is just as valid as yours. Again, I urge you to check this video out because I just gave you a very watered down version of this whole thing. But the point is, with sex and gender, it's never that simple. Educate yourself on the topic. You'll be blown away by what science has to teach us. Don't let men like Kenneth Cook dumb down the topic of sex and gender to 2 boxes. The reality is much more complicated and fascinating.
What does Jehovah say about that? At Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 5, he told the nation of Israel that, quote, "A woman must not put on the clothing of a man, nor should a man wear the clothing of a woman, for anyone doing so is detestable to Jehovah your God." If that is how the Creator feels about the switching of clothing, how much more detestable he must view the world's attempts to blur the lines of gender with false labeling.
This ignorant bigot mentions that men dressing as women and women dressing as men is something abhorrent to God, and cites this verse from Deuteronomy. Guess what, Kenneth? This verse doesn't matter. Christians are not under the Mosaic law anymore. And you might respond, well, yeah, we're not under the law, but we're still learning from it how God feels about things, right? Well, if that's the case, why are you clean shaven? The law mentions that a man should never cut the corners of his beard, because that's unacceptable to God. Clearly, God doesn't like a clean shave. Why are you focusing on this verse and not this one? I'll do you another one. Why do you allow your female members to have short hair when the Apostle Paul said that short hair on women is a disgrace? And this is not the law we're talking about, it's Paul. Kenneth Cook, and sadly, Christians in general, need to cherry pick scriptures to back up their arguments. He is using this Bible verse to excuse his disgust for trans people. And we can see right through it. Guess what, Kenneth? The Bible makes 0 comments on transsexual people. 0. And we mentioned that gender norms change all the time. So you have no basis to condemn queer folks either. If a man wants to put on dress and makeup, what's the problem? If a woman wants to get super jacked in the gym and shave her head, power to her. Just because people don't fall under your strict gender binary doesn't mean God hates them. Because that binary only exists in your head, Kenneth. The real world is more complicated and interesting than you make it out to be.
Recently, the World Health Organization adjusted its view of gender. It now states that, quote, "There are many genders existing on a spectrum from male to female." It added that gender identity exists on a continuum and that sex is not limited to male or female. Again, really? Talk about an attempt to tear apart what Jehovah has made. So then even government agencies on a global scale are getting involved, and they are critical of anyone who does not adopt their warped view.
I would also love to point out Watchtower's hypocrisy here. They were very happy to quote the World Health Organization when it came to COVID-19 protocol. But when it comes to an article on gender identity, which again confirms the idea that gender is a spectrum, Watchtower dismisses this as satanic lies. They not only cherry-pick the Bible, they also cherry-pick scientific research to further their hateful propaganda.
Again, really?
Yes, Kenneth, really. Scientists are not perfect, but I would rather trust in their expertise than in your doomsday cult of make-believe.
Jehovah's purpose for humans is clear, but Satan's world now says that marriage can be between two men or two women. Again, really? We can be certain that promoting this corrupt view is part of Satan's attempt to ruin mankind, to make them so abhorrent to Jehovah that he would abandon humans and his purpose for mankind in the earth.
This is complete nonsense. The legalization of gay marriage is a fairly recent event, which is by no means universal. There are many countries where gay marriage is still not legal, and other ones where even being gay can land you the death penalty. Again, the death penalty. Is Satan also behind those countries? So he legalizes marriage in some countries, but bans it in others? Couldn't he make up his mind already? If Satan really was behind all of this, then he has no idea what he's doing. This just shows you how West-centered this whole speech is. This dimwit is only concerned on what is happening in his own country, and is just completely oblivious to everything outside.
Just like the disgusting names of the false gods that humans have given to the literal planets, the false labeling of humankind and the immorality will not continue. For his own namesake, and for those who love him, Jehovah will bring to ruin those ruining the earth.
Well, that's a fancy way of saying anyone who doesn't align with my narrow definition of morality will be slaughtered very soon.
Well, it's one thing to consider Jehovah's view on such matters among ourselves, but what are we doing to help other people? What are we doing to build respect for Jehovah's view of the earth, Jehovah's view of humankind, and Jehovah's purpose for their future? Well, with a clear conscience, we can confidently say that we've not held back in speaking the truth about such matters.
I wish you would have. I wish you would just shut the fuck up. You and all the other Christian bigots who make fools out of themselves out in the streets. Just crawl on a hole and disappear, Kenneth.
For example, here are some of the articles on jw.org that honest-hearted ones can read. For instance, what does the Bible say about abortion?
Yeah, the Bible doesn't say much. Just a brief mention on how to make a potion in case a pregnant woman is suspected of adultery. The priest makes her drink the potion, and if she was unfaithful, her womb will wither away. Of course, killing the fetus inside. God sanctioned abortion in the Bible, folks.
Does the Bible comment on same-sex marriages?
Nope, because gay marriage didn't exist yet. There are commands on stoning homosexuals to death, yeah. Nothing on gay marriage.
And how can I explain the Bible's view of homosexuality?
Well, you can point to the verses saying homosexuals deserve to die and use those to excuse your homophobia. Or you can also mention that God hates the sin and not the sinner, or whatever insensitive nonsense you want to add.
Knowing this, what should we continue to do? Well, we should kindly and respectfully help others to see Jehovah's view while there is still time. We must never become ashamed of the good news, for it's not just good news about paradise. It's also good news about Jehovah's time to set things right on earth again. Parents with young children should take courage from this fact as they work hard to protect their children from Satan's attempts to ruin their minds and hearts with immoral thoughts and false reasoning. Thankfully, the end is coming quickly.
Indoctrinate your children to become intolerant bigots like yourself. And the rest of the talk is just more fear-mongering, assuring you that this destruction of the gays will happen very soon. This was an extremely triggering piece of propaganda to cover. But sadly, this intolerant and hateful rhetoric is all too common in both Christianity and Islam. It is true, a lot of Christians in the United States and Europe are now more tolerant towards LGBT members, and that's wonderful. If you're one of those Christians, you have my respect. But the truth is, outside these liberal communities, the Christian world remains very much homophobic. And yeah, when you have Bible verses that command the stoning of homosexuals, I'm not surprised. I'm a straight male. I'm only an ally to the LGBT community, so why am I so invested in this topic? Well, because people are killing themselves over this. LGBT members who are raised up in intolerant households are more likely to commit suicide than straight members. Transgender folks are targeted and murdered at an alarming rate. So much suffering. For what? To uphold the Iron Age law code in which we're indoctrinated to believe in? If you are a believer watching this, I urge you, please educate yourself. Listen to the experiences of gay people, trans people, queer people, the whole community. If you want to hold on to your faith, that's okay. But please don't use your faith to excuse your intolerance. And if your intolerance is a result of your faith, then I suggest you take a deep, serious look at your own religion. And please, don't try to convert an LGBT member into a religion which doesn't accept them as who they are. You're only gonna cause them pain in the future. Because for every tolerant Christian, there are 10 more religious fanatics who will go out of their way to persecute the LGBT community and to take away their legal rights and tell them they shouldn't exist and that God hates them. If you are one of those religious fanatics and choose to remain in ignorance, and you refuse to empathize with your fellow man, and keep calling them names and keep making their lives impossible, then you can take your holy text and stick it up your ass. And I mean it, go fuck yourself. It's 2023. Not a single LGBT person should kill themselves because of your religion. None. And if you are a member of the community watching this, if you are bisexual or trans or queer or non-binary, it's okay. Don't allow any religious bigot to tell you you're messed up or defective, or that you're worth less than them. Don't allow any family member to disrespect you or to put you down for who you are. You are a human being worthy of respect. I'm with you, and I will fight for you. And I wish you the best. The very best. I'm both happy and sad that this talk was released. I'm glad because the whole world can see for themselves how horrible this religion really is. The hateful rhetoric runs from the bottom down and is promoted with articles, videos, and even cartoons for children. I'm glad this clown immortalized his hate for future generations to see. But I'm also really saddened that young LGBT people raised by Jehovah's Witnesses and other fundamentalist Christians will watch this video and feel worthless and hated by God just for being who they are. It's a mental torture that deprives them of the love and respect they deserve. Again, so much suffering for what? This needs to end. I'm sorry I couldn't crack any jokes this time because what can I even joke about? People are killing themselves over this. It's shameful. Thank you for sticking till the end of the video, guys. Have a wonderful day and stay away from the tower.